Hello and welcome to CCM Discovery. As you know, this is your go to spot for uncovering today's precious voices in Christian music, inspiring authors, comedians, and the movers and shakers that are shaking the industry that we love. We'll also be rediscovering the classic artists of the foundation who built CCM as we know it today. I'm your host. I get lucky. I'm Roger St. James. I am a former CCM radio DJ, and I'm here to guide you through the stories, sounds, and the people behind the music that we love. Whether you're a longtime fan or just starting your journey, get ready to dive deep into the hearts, spirit, and inspirational voices of contemporary Christian music. So let's discover together.
Oh, hey. Just walking through a flower garden today, and it had me thinking about the ways of God and how He emphasizes the soil in Scripture. And soil is a reference to our heart. And as I just was admiring just the beautiful flowers, it occurred to me that these beautiful flowers couldn't blossom into the beautiful flowers that we're admiring lest the soil that they're planted in be fertile soil. The parallel we can draw is that the one responsibility that God gives us is to tend the garden of our heart. And that tares and wheat grow up together. And if tares are permitted to grow in our heart, they choke out the wheat. And if weeds and certain elements that are unhealthy for the beautiful flowers that we see are permitted to grow among, it would choke out that which is beautiful. And God has sown something. If you're a believer, this applies to you. That is in your heart that He has created and designed to be beautiful and to bring delight and glory and encouragement and edification to all those around you. But it's imperative that you allow the Holy Spirit to begin to get out the weeds, get out the tares out of your heart, so that that which is beautiful and glorious may come through. And I just pray for you that today as you watch this, that there be an element where you're going to get into the secret place and just get transparent before God and say, God, there's this in my heart, there's that, and I submit it to you, I give it to you, spray some Holy Ghost pesticide on it, and trust that something beautiful, maybe not that one, something beautiful is going to come from your life as you just submit and allow God to uproot the weeds of fear, of intimidation, so that God can bring forth the beauty that He's created to bring forth. And you are beautiful.
That was my good friend and new friend, Danny Bucy. And it is my great pleasure to introduce him to you. Thank you for joining us, Danny.
Hey, it's my pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for
And
having me.
it is truly my pleasure. And one of the things I like to do before we get into what we're going to talk about is I am a father, I am a husband, and I want to give you the opportunity to brag on your wife and children.
Oh, well, that could take the whole show.
We're okay with
I'm
that.
I'm so fortunate to have the wife that I have and to have the daughter that I have. And throughout, I was never married, and I wrestled with God through that for about a decade with that, and I eventually came to the point to where I had to come to a place in my heart where I may not have children, I may not never be married, and this isn't what I envisioned when I gave my heart to Jesus when I was 18, and now I'm in my 30s and there's no wife in sight, and suddenly God brought Stephanie into my life, and we got married, and then within, I don't know, a year and a half, we had our daughter, Caroline. And the reason that she is named Caroline is kind of a funny story. Do you like funny stories on the Roger St.
Oh,
James?
what what
Uh,
what we talk about here is, as I touched base with you before, one of
okay.
the things that I love about CCM Discovery is just the music that brings us together. It's
Yeah.
the stories that makes us friends,
Right.
and it's Jesus that ties us together.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so my wife is from out west, California. She was born and raised. She had moved to Reno, Lake Tahoe area where her grandmother lived. Her grandmother was 100 years old, and she wanted to ensure that her grandmother was having proper care. And her grandmother lived at home, and she lived to be 102. And when I first met Stephanie, her grandmother was 99, and I remember praying with her that her grandmother would see us get married. And not only did her grandmother get to witness that, her grandmother also got to hold um, her great granddaughter in her arms before she passed away at 102. But on New Year's Eve, my wife decided, or well, this had been planned, and decided to go back home because she had moved to North Carolina, the South, where I live. I mean, if you can't tell from my voice, when I go out west, they ask me if I'm from Australia. I'm like, what? Do I sound that different? I think they have the accent. But anyway, she went out to Reno, Lake Tahoe, for her baby shower. And this was New Year's Eve. And the shower never happened, but the baby came forth 2 months early. And so New Year's Eve, my daughter was born. And um, so I wake up New Year's Day to, or New Year's Eve, at some point throughout the night to text, congratulations, you're what a beautiful baby you have here. And I am in North Carolina. I can't catch a flight. I can't on New Year's Eve. I can't catch one on New Year's Day. So I just take off driving 35 hours straight
Wow.
um, from where I live in the South to get to Reno, Nevada. And so my wife and I hadn't decided on a name for our daughter yet. I thought, Reno, I don't know if you know anything. It's kind of changed now, I guess, with Tesla moving into town and various manufacturers and industry is moving there now. But traditionally, the economy of Nevada was built on everything that's illegal, gambling, prostitution, um, pot, and so forth. And here, my daughter, who was supposed to be a Carolina girl, I mean, she's North Carolina is where we live, and is born in Reno, Nevada. And I thought that was not supposed to be so. On the gambling strip in this hospital, her name, and we hadn't decided on name, Caroline will be her name. And my wife
Perfect.
agreed. It resonated with her spirit. And so we named our daughter Caroline. Um, because I just felt like she was supposed to be a Carolina girl. Yeah,
Oh,
if you
perfect.
get where I'm going. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's how that came to pass, and my wife's wonderful. Yeah.
But you mentioned there that you came to the Lord at 18. How did that happen?
Well, there's another story. I did not grow up in a Christian home. I mean, my family in the South, you'll find everyone believes. Most people believe in God. There are very few people who are atheists, and very few people who are hostile toward the faith. But everyone believes in God, and there's a church on every corner. Except there's not necessarily a radical, I'm sold out for Jesus and my life is solely consecrated to Jesus. It's kind of the scripture holding to a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. And so you can see that a lot in the South, and in different regions of the country there's different elements at work that the enemy uses, but that's kind of what happens in the South. And so I grew up in the South, and my dad was actually a truck driver. I come from very humble means. And so a church bus would come when we lived in a trailer park and would come to the trailer park. We actually had about five that would come and pick us up, all of us kids, and any adults who wanted to go every Sunday morning. And so occasionally, I think my mom would make us go to. There were five in my family. I'm the oldest of five, and she would force us to, I think, go to church sometimes just to get a break, to be honest with you, because my dad was on the road. And so we would go, and I probably got saved 20 times as a kid. Every altar call I would go up because I felt, oh, I need to get saved, make sure I'm right with Jesus. And so I don't know which time it took. To be honest with you, it was probably the first time. But then my parents got separated, divorced when I was 12. And I don't know who out there that may be listening to this. If you've experienced this, you can probably you will probably identify with what I'm saying, but it is one of the most fragmenting things that an individual can go through. For me, it was. And so I was very athletic, played in all the football all-star games and stuff and basketball and baseball. But once my parents divorced, um, I just gave my heart completely to rebellion is what the fragmentation that happened in me. And my mom was with another guy and my dad was already with another woman and it just didn't seem right to me to see my mom kissing another guy, another man. And so I wanted to go kick him in the rear end whenever I saw that taking place. And um so I determined in my heart that anything he said to do, I would do the opposite. And so I began getting in trouble in school and my mom just she had four younger children to deal with besides just me and needed peace in the home. And I was constantly at it with my stepdad. And so I was kicked out of my house and at 13. And I yeah, yeah. And so I kind of couch surfed with some friends for a little while. And eventually DSS caught up with me. I was sleeping under the bed of one of my friend's house, hiding from his mom, and I had a little duffel bag of clothes I carried around with me with my toothbrush. And, when you're a teenager, you have acne, so I had my oxy pads. I don't know if those are still a thing, but try to keep my face clean and all that. And so my friend's mother found me sleeping under the bed and was like, "What in the world is going on here?" So she called the cops, and the cops came and questioned me, and I told them, I'd been kicked out of my home, and they didn't believe me. They thought I had ran away or was just wanting to go. And by this age, I had already because I I had no real parental guidance as a child, so I had already experimented with drugs and with sex and not full blown sex. I'm sorry, I don't need to get too detailed with it, but I'd
It's
already
okay.
began being sexually involved with girls. I never struggled with the homo stuff, but with girls. And so my wife just put her hand over her face. Anyway, so okay, where am I going here? So I was
No.
13 and the cops, yeah, they came and got me. They thought I just ran away. And I did not run away. I was kicked out of my home. And so the cops took me back to my house and they asked me just to sit in the car and they were very nice and pleasant to me and I sat in the car and I remember watching the cops walk up to the front door and talk to my mom and stepdad and they confirmed I was kicked out and was no longer welcome there. And so the cops came back and I could tell it was actually a female cop and she was from England. And years later I ran into her at the YMCA and asked her if she remembered me, and she did. As I'm probably talking 15 years later, and I thanked her for being so kind to me that day. And so she took me to. It was a Saturday, and so she called the on staff social worker, and they placed me in a foster home, and I was in that foster home for 9 weeks. But what is so important to understand here is that I came into this covenant with rebellion, and even though it wasn't toward God, you can't exercise principles that are, dare I say the word, demonic and expect good results. And rebellion is as witchcraft, as the Bible teaches. And so I was in this foster home and still full of rebellion, and I didn't have anything against the foster parents or teachers or anything like that. But within the first 9 weeks of school, I had already. Are you familiar with the term in school suspension? Did they have that around when you were in school?
Unfortunately, very, very much
Oh,
so.
you are? Okay, so maybe I need to ask you some questions.
No, actually, it has to do with my older son, but yes, I am very
Oh,
familiar
okay,
with
okay.
that.
Well, you're allowed 10 days per year. Well, I had reached the 10-day maximum by, the first, I don't know, 6 weeks of school. So, they called my foster mother who, was a nurse and told her, you need to come get Danny. Now he has exceeded his in school suspension time and now has to have out of school suspension anytime that he gets in trouble for the rest of the year. And so she came to the school and just brought all my clothes and everything else and said, we can't deal with him. And, um, and so then I was put into another foster home. And one thing I want to emphasize though, before I got before I got kicked out of this foster home is one night I was in my room, and these foster homes, group homes, they're lonely places. And it sometimes bothers me when I hear churches and Christians and everyone wants to go to Africa or India. And I'm thinking, why are we stepping over all of the American kids without homes and without beds? I mean, go to West Virginia, go to Virginia. There are a million people you can minister to that are children that need our help. There's a place called Appalachia, Virginia, that's the most impoverished region in the country, and they need our help. We don't have to necessarily go to Africa to help people. And so, um, one night in this foster home, I remember just I was looking out the window before I was displaced, and just looking at the stars and just kind of thinking, I don't know about maybe what I was going to do the next day, or where am I at? Why am I here? And why did my dad leave my mom? And my goal was to get them back together. Then I thought everything could be normal again, which was never to happen. But um, all of a sudden, the presence of God just filled my room. And it was unlike anything I had ever experienced in my life. All of a sudden, God wasn't just a dusty Bible sitting there as a home decor item. There was actually life to the Bible, and God was no longer just in the South. We have these beautiful, beautiful white the architecture of these white churches with the white steeples, and but you go inside and it's just somebody yelling kind of, and a lot of the fundamental Baptist churches that would have been in the South when I was a teenager and or a young person and a teenager, and but I never really experienced the life there that I experienced that room in that foster home that night when the Holy Spirit came in like I don't know what to say, like a mighty rushing wind. And he said to me, Danny, will you give your heart to me? And my immediate inclination was to say yes. I mean, how could I not? This was
Yeah.
so strong. It about knocked me back on my bed from looking out the window. The presence of God was so tangible and real. It was unlike any. I'd already smoked pot. I'd already, you know, been drinking. I understood what being high was like, but this was greater than any high I had ever experienced. And and it felt good, and I didn't want it to leave. And the Holy Spirit was speaking to me in that still small voice. It wasn't like the room started quaking and shaking. It was a still small voice. And that's how God most often speaks to us. And he said, will you give your heart to me? Will you live for me? And my immediate inclination was to say yes. But then all of a sudden, the battlefield of the mind, I believe there's a book titled that. Um, Satan comes in and reminds me of all the fun times I was having, before I was put in this foster home with smoking my pot and with hanging out with some girls, who were promiscuous, a little older, um, and so I said, "Yes, God, I will, but just give me a few more years to have fun, and then I will give my heart to have fun." And little did I know what that fun would turn into. Um, okay, back to the school. So that foster mother drops my clothes off at the school and says, we can't handle him. DSS comes and gets me, puts me in another foster home. I'm there throughout the duration of that year. Um, and this would have been middle school. And technically, the last grade that I completed was seventh grade. Um, they bumped me on up to eighth grade because it's middle school, be like sixth through eighth, and they bumped me up after 2 or 3 weeks. I didn't fail because of making zeros. I failed because I just missed so many days all the time. And so they, I'm in this new foster home now, and at the end of that. school year, now I'm in a different school and everything. I just left the system, and I had at that time you could sign yourself out, and I just signed myself out and just couch surfed and lived with friends, um and I was having my fun that I told God that I wanted to have that night when He came and visited me, and that fun was not fun in hindsight. For some reason, I was already an alcoholic because I was exposed to it all my life. My dad rode with a Harley gang in Atlanta as a child, and I just been around a lot of rough, situations. And so, for some reason, I loved to drink vodka. And when I would get drunk on vodka, I'm talking when I was young, 16, 15, 16, 17. I would get drunk, and I loved to drink and drive, believe it or not. There's just something that just was fun about that to me. And I also loved to fight. And um, I don't know if I said that with a southern accent, but F-I-G-H-T, fights. I
If I
loved
yeah,
to, I
y'all got to
loved,
fight. Yeah.
yeah, I loved to fight. And so one night, me and a friend were out, and I got enough. I got in lots of fights, and somehow I wound up at this Christian. It was a non-denominational. It was a different type of church than I'd ever experienced before. But they were having like a youth night at a gym, and they were playing basketball, serving pizza, this and that. And the lady that was serving me, I was in the line, and when she gave me my pizza, because like I said, I was good at sports, so I was really good at basketball, when I was younger, and so much so I made the varsity team in middle school as a you know freshman, but I just couldn't play because I was in trouble all the time. And so I was there just to play the basketball. I wasn't there for any of the church activities and for the free pizza. And when the lady handed me the pizza, she said immediately God spoke to her that I want you to show him unconditional love so that he'll have a point of reference to understand my love. And I will use him as a spark in my body, in the body of Christ. I'm paraphrasing. And she responded to that calling. She talked to her husband and asked if they could invite me to come stay at their home. And so all of a sudden, I have this family. I'm 16, inviting me to come live with them. And I just met these people, and I'm thinking, okay, this is weird. Why these people want me to come live with them? Everybody else is trying to kick me out, and they want me to live with them. But she didn't tell me what the Lord had spoke to her, and so I did not just jump right in the bandwagon because I thought there must be some agenda. You develop a street smarts, when you're having to. You have to kind of develop that to survive. When you're living as I had been living. And so I didn't immediately just trust anything and everyone and whatever they may have said to me. And I may still struggle with that, a little bit. And I need to be a little more trusting of people probably. Um, but they continue to pursue me with God's love. And so one night I wasn't living with them, but she or the husband would make contact with me once a week, every 2 weeks. And I was out with a friend. We were drinking and driving, was my favorite pastime at this point in my life. And it was he and I, and he was, and two girls. And in the South, there would be these places like back in the woods where you just know where this is where people go to party at. It's like hidden away. It's like I live in a very small town, and so the high school students will go to these places to party, to have fun, and etc. So we went to the spot, and there were some grown men there who were hunting, and that I was had been drinking vodka, and um, there were probably 12 of them, and they were grown men, and uh, we got out of our car, and they were kind of in that spot, and they were there, I guess, about to divide out and go hunt for the evening, and so I just said, and I'm not going to use any cursing, but I use curse words, and I was like, what the, are you guys looking at?
Yeah.
I was looking for a fight, and it was very, it was not intelligent of me to be looking for a fight with grown men as a 16-year-old. And so I got a fight, and with about six of them on one. And at the end of it, I was still standing, but I was standing with a broken jaw that was separated. And so my friend took me to my friend. He should have jumped in and helped me, but he wasn't that good of a friend, I guess. But he took me to the hospital, which I'm grateful for, and they wired my teeth together for 6 weeks. And so for 6 weeks, my teeth were wired together. And this is the time where this family, this woman who God had spoken to, began to really get involved in my life. And she was there at the hospital day and night. She showed up immediately. The pastor of the church who was hosting, that youth group was hosting the basketball night, came and began to build a relationship with me. I guess she had shared with him what submitted that to him, what the Lord had spoken to her. And so for I don't know, a week, I'm stuck in the hospital with this woman telling me about Jesus. Um and there was something that I don't know if they still do this, but youth rallies. Are you familiar with that term? Where
Oh yeah.
they would
Oh
have
yeah.
Christian bands come and the featured Christian speakers, and
Yep.
um, and she said, we want you to go to this youth rally with us. And to me, that youth rally, I'm like, I mean, that sounded gay to me. I mean, I'm just being honest, just using a terminology that where my head was at the time. That's what is a youth rally? She's like, oh, you'll love it. There'll be like 2,000 people there. It's in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and it's everyone's your age. I'm like, I'm not going to that. And then all of a sudden, in the hospital, I'm thinking, but if there's 2,000 people and we're in hotel rooms, that would probably be 50% guys and 50% girls. And so there'd probably be 50% girls, and there's pools and there's bathing suits. Okay, I guess I'll give it a shot, this youth rally thing. And so I did. And um, I went to this youth rally, and the first night, I had never observed anything like this. It was like young people who actually wanted to be in church, not people who were on the back row, hiding or throwing spitwads or doing whatever, that I was used to seeing in church. And they love Jesus, and that was different. I had never observed that before. And so I went back after the meeting, that it was a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday conference. After that Thursday night, thinking, oh, this is interesting. I haven't seen anything like this. Friday night rolls around, and it's time for the meeting. Can you excuse me while I get some water?
Of
Hold
course.
on. Thank you. Such a gentleman. Very nice. Thank you. Um, Friday night rolls around, and the same thing. And I'm just observing these people who were, well, what I would explain now is worshiping, but they were just singing to God. They were lifting their hands, and some people were like crying. Young people. I'm not talking about the old, lady at the church, who's giving a testimony and said, or is about to sing a song and says, "Oh, I can't sing and don't pay attention to the way I sing. Just listen to the words," and then I'll start crying. And she would sing a hymn or something. I'm talking about young people, and not just young people, but attractive young people, and they weren't interested in me, or and I wasn't used to that. I was used to trying to get attention, and they weren't interested in that kind of thing. They were interested in Jesus, and that surprised me. So I'm a very curious person. And so I began, I was on the back row the first night. Now I think I'm gonna have to investigate this a little bit and see what this is all about. So I walked, like, got out of my, seat on the back row, and walked to, and this is a big convention center, and walked about halfway up the aisle, and I looked around, and sure enough, these people, it was just something that they were worshiping Jesus, and I could sense that an element of what I described that I experienced when I was 13, when the Holy Spirit came into my room and said, "Let me have some fun."
after a broken jaw. That was fun. Teeth were all together, eating soup through a straw that this woman is giving me, whom God had spoken to. And so um, I'm just, this feeling again is coming over me. And I go back to my hotel room that night, and God brought that experience back to my remembrance. And um, I said, so is that what I'm experiencing? That this stirring in my heart, and have all these other people experience what I experienced when I was 13, except they were smart and they said yes, God, where I said, let me have some fun first. And that still small voice said yes. And okay, third night of the conference, it's Saturday night, last night, and if if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it. And so sure enough, I get out of my seat and get into the aisle. I make my way real smooth and cool past people. I pulled my hat down low. I did, because they had cameras that were like, showing the people on the screen that were singing or speaking, and I didn't know if they were like, if it was like being shown on TV. I didn't know anything about this kind of stuff, so I didn't want nobody recognizing me. So I pulled my hat down low over my eyes and maybe put on a hood or something, and made my way down all the way to the very front, to where where people, there'll be like the seats, but then there's like, I don't know what, a 20-foot area of where people are just worshiping, like the really on fire people, and they were just worshiping God with all of their heart, soul, mind, and strength. And when that happens, God is going to respond. He's going to show up, and and I'm feeling that tug on my heart again. And to, are you ready? Have you had your fun yet? And I'm hearing those words. God kind of speaks to us in our own language. It's funny. And um, so I'm looking around. I wanted to make sure no one was looking at me. And I said, okay, well, how do I experience what they're experiencing? Um, I want to feel what this girl beside me is feeling, and she's crying. But okay, what is she doing? What's this guy doing? And they all seem to have their hands lifted up, and just worshiping and focusing solely on God, and singing, not just singing a song like, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, but they were like singing intentionally to God. And
it was real. They were feeling it.
yeah, yeah. And I thought, well, okay, I'm not feeling it quite like they are. Um, but they're like lifting their hands. So maybe I'm supposed to lift my hands. I didn't have formal training. I didn't grow up in this, so I didn't know what to do. But now there's not a magic formula to lifting your hands, but what it is a step of faith. And so I feel like God said to lift your hands. I said, there's no way I'm lifting my hands with all these people around. They got these cameras, these big screens. They're not zooming in on me lifting my hands. So I pulled my hat down even further, and then I began to get like miserable, like your opportunity is going to pass you by. And I'm like, oh, and so I decided, okay, I will lift my hands. So I'm like this, and I still had my hat down low, trying to cover my face and eyes, and I do this. And that's all I had. But when I did this, God's presence, boom, just like shot down my fingers, that step of faith. And then it went from this to this. And now the tears began to flow. Now I have I'm experiencing what everyone around me is. And I knew from that point forward that God was real, and that my life was to be consecrated to him. And he actually, like, and I don't want to freak anyone out, when I say these type of things, but God's real. I'm sorry, he's not just the Bible that sits on the shelf. He's not just the steeple on a church. He's not what the atheists make him out to be on TV. He's literally real, and he's tangible, and he wants to interact with us personally, and not just for us to read the Bible and read about him, but to actually know the God of the Bible. We can actually know him and fellowship with him. And I was having that fellowship with him, and as I had my hands lifted and was worshiping, it's like the Holy Spirit then took me on a timeline. I can't even explain it. It's so supernatural of the time I was born. And remember, my dad rode with Harley gangs in Atlanta,
Yeah.
and I was exposed to all kinds of danger. I rode on a Harley with my hands on the gas tank as a child, and I mean, all across the southeast, there was no seatbelt. It wasn't safe. But God took me. I mean, that's just very small, and I'm glad that was my experience. But um, God took me on a timeline throughout my life and showed me all the times that I could have died, but He spared my life. Times that I'd forgot about, and there was no denying from that moment forward that God was real, and that and then that's when the woman told me what the Lord had spoke to her. And then not in that moment where at the altar, but um at the when we went back to our rooms that night, and I explained to her what happened, and she told me what the Lord had spoke to her that night in the pizza line to show me unconditional love, so that I would have the capacity to understand God's unconditional love for us. And so I experienced that, and so I was determined I was going to go back, and I had a gang I ran with, and I was going to bring them all to church, and I was just going to convert the world. And I came back home, and sadly, it lasted about 3 or 4 months because I had so many. And it wasn't now. No one could ever convince me again that God wasn't real, and and never was I going planning to not to walk with God. I was going to figure out how to, but I had so much bondage in my life. It doesn't take long, for the enemy to get hooks inside of our hearts that will pull us away. And what we sow in sin, I later learned we reap in temptation. That's why it's so important that we don't open doors to sin in our life if we haven't already, because Satan will tempt us in that very area where we've opened the door to sin. And where I'd opened so many doors to sin and rebellion in my life, Satan came and began just pulling me back into the drugs. I didn't break free from the best thing I could have done was listened, not been rebellious, listen to the godly counsel in my life that was telling me, you need to get rid of these friends. You're not going to change them; they're going to change you. And I just didn't have the wisdom to understand that at the time. And I thought I was strong enough, I could change them. But no, I fell back in to the trap. And so I loved God, but I no longer was living for Him as I should. But I knew that He was real. And I knew I had to get back to that place somehow. And so at 18, I go back to this same conference. It was an annual thing. And this time, same thing. I experienced God. I know the routine now. I need to get myself to the front every night and get as tanked up or whatever you want to call it as I can with God's presence so that I can endure when I get home. I mean, it's that's not how Christianity works, but it's how God it worked with me. It should be a daily thing. But in my infantile, no biblical education, no theology. I knew I just needed to experience as much of God as I could that weekend. So thinking that could maybe sustain me this time, because it was in my heart to be sustained the first time. And um, this time, the difference after the conference was over on Monday morning, after the service is over, I did break ties with friends. If they weren't going to come with me to Jesus, I certainly wasn't going to go with them to hell. I don't mean literally, like they're dying and going to hell, though a lot of my friends are dead now from back then or in prison. And I was going forward with God. And this church family just took me in, and I didn't have a sense of family. And I moved in with this family. One more quick thing, let me backtrack just a little, not to confuse anyone. But I went home to my mom's to visit my siblings, and one night, and my stepdad, he was an alcoholic, and he had hurt his leg, and he was on these painkillers. I guess what we call opioids, and he was mixing that with alcohol, and he was very mean spirited when he would drink. And I have two little sisters, and because their room wasn't clean, he was he had taken their clothes and put it in a burn barrel. Have you ever seen those burn barrels? They're like burn trash.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't do that in the other parts of the country, but that that was what was going on. And he was burning my sister's clothes and their toys and stuff. And that bothered me. And again, as the oldest, I felt like the man of the house. My dad was gone, so I felt like a responsibility for my dad. I had to protect his daughters and my sisters and my brothers as well. I had two younger brothers, two younger sisters. And and so again, all I knew how to do to cope was to fight. So I challenging my stepdad, will come outside and you know what, we'll see, blah blah blah. And again, lots of profanity. And um he didn't come outside, but what he was laying on the couch. I was standing by the door, and he reached around, and I just knew in my spirit he's grabbing a gun. And he went and pulled the gun. Now, simultaneously, as this is happening, I mean, I just hear jump through the door. It was warm weather, so it wasn't like a wood door. It was a screen glass door. So I just jumped through the door, bam, like simultaneously. The gunshot rang out, and I had jumped through the door, and I took off running. And my siblings, my mom didn't know if I was dead or alive. And what's interesting is that my mom was calling the woman who had said that had invited me to come live with their family, but I hadn't accepted at this point. And and so after the gunshot, my mom screamed, 'cause didn't know if I was dead, just dropped the phone. So all this was caught on. You remember the voicemails? Like it would go to
Yeah.
voicemail if they didn't answer. So this is probably 11:30 at night, and I actually have it on recording still. And I don't listen to it, but um, but it's on recording. You hear the gunshot, you hear my sister scream and my mom scream, and I ran and I just took off running and ran to some friend's house in the neighborhood, and the cops had came, and my little brother, I'm not going to throw out no names, but the one closest to me in age had come out looking for me, and he found me, and he told me the cops were at the house now arresting my stepdad. And so then I stuck up my chest. Now we're walking back. Now that I know the cops are there, and they arrested him, and they used that video that where my mom had dropped the phone, and the gunshots had rang out as a evidence, you know, that he was guilty. But what I want, the spiritual lesson that I want, that I hope that everyone can see here, is that God um, inst- instills things inside of people, and Satan will try to take that out in its infancy. And so when the cops came, they performed their measurements, and oh, well, the angle it should have went, and the bullet, according to them, should have went right through my throat. And who was to know that years later I would be singing and speaking in churches, and in my early days speaking in prisons and youth groups and youth rallies, and eventually singing. I didn't sing at this point. I didn't play instruments. I didn't do anything like that. And so Satan was trying to take out in its infancy what before it had before my voice had a chance to blossom and grow and be used by God for what God desired to use it for. And you see that scripturally as well, as with the king wanted all the 2-year-olds killed, right? Trying to take out Jesus in his infant form before he could mature. Same with Moses, right? So it's a tactic of the enemy to try to uproot the seeds of God that are planted in any of our lives while they're still in their infant form. So we must guard and protect those seeds. But it was the grace of God that protected the seed in me. It wasn't my doing. It was I just jumped through the door. But Satan was trying to take out my voice before I would ever use it to speak a word that would edify God or sing a note that would bring pleasure to the Lord.
And Danny, I can't. That story is just. We talk about, on CCM Discovery about the stories and how did you. I mean, I can't. To be honest with you, my friend, I'm completely like
Are you
gobsmacked
surprised?
about that story. But
Well, everyone that meets me now is, because I'm such a different. They can't imagine me being like getting in a fight and all this wild stuff I would do. But
and
again, that's the transformation of the Lord. And, yeah.
and that's what I'm hanging on to here. But how did we as like I had nothing to do with it, but how
How did
did
we?
you go
Oh, I watched your
from
show and
that?
that inspired me, and so I'm just kidding. I'm just
How did you go from that
uh-huh.
to
Yeah,
being a performer? And like you said,
yeah,
you hadn't played any instruments to that point.
right. Yeah, so it gets interesting. Yeah.
Where did that come from? How did all of a sudden it become from that to
Hmm.
amazing songs like "You Alone"? I
Oh,
mean,
thank you.
where did
Yeah.
we? How
So
did you get there?
yeah, so I just began saying yes to Jesus. And the first thing he told me to do was go get my GED. So I obeyed and went and got my GED. Again, now I'm living with this family, so I have some discipleship. I didn't always obey it. Actually, I probably hardly ever. I, I didn't hardly ever obey it. Not because I didn't want to. I just didn't. I really struggled with self discipline. After years of sowing to the flesh, you can't just immediately flip a switch and now all of a sudden I'm Mr. Spiritual floating on a cloud. Doing everything that God asks me to do. Um, but I had this family that continued to show unconditional love to me, and they were part of a church, and this church took me on too as I think their special project. Um, I don't know if God spoke to the pastor or to the people in the congregation, um, but they all. The first song I wrote was called "Daddy," and that song, it's not my best song at all. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me backtrack. So this family took me in. I'm going to this church. This church, they treat me like family, and I'm so eager to grow in the Lord. I mean, every night of the week, I'm looking to go to a church service. I went to the Church of God on Wednesday night. If they had a service, I'd go to a Thursday night tent revival meeting with some out of town guy setting up a tent that's probably a money racket where he was just asking for money and had the nice car and all that. I didn't know the difference. I was naive. I probably went to a Mormon church. I was just going anywhere I could go trying to find Jesus. I didn't, but this church family that I really was grounded in kind of taught me the difference. No, the Mormon that's not Jesus. That's a false religion, and so they took me in, and a few years have passed. I was so hungry for God. I would just go and mow the pastor's grass, just so he would teach me, just like one on one, about the things of the Lord. And he became like a father figure to me. And that's the thing. I did not have a father growing up. And God provided five different men in my life that each instilled something of, first, the Father God's heart into me. And secondly, even practical matters. Like, I didn't know how to fix a car. Nobody ever taught me how to work on cars. So I had one guy at the church who loved Jesus with all his heart, but his things was he worked on cars. So when I'd have car problems with my beaters, and he would know how to fix them right up. And that was a spiritual father to me. He loved me. And he had a sound system. This comes into play years later. Um, but that was one of the spiritual fathers. When I was 21, God spoke to a man, and I almost feel like I want to give him a shout out because he still is in my life today, and
Go ahead.
he still has the same giving heart. I don't want to get him killed by Antifa or something, but I'm just playing. Uh, but is no, it's yeah, it's cool. It's cool. I'm sorry. I have a production person over here telling me to stop moving my feet, but now my feet are excited right now. So anyway, yeah, John Harwood is the gentleman's name. And God spoke to him. He said, I want you to go buy him a guitar, and I'm going to supernaturally teach him how to play. And so he was obedient. He went and literally spent his own money and bought me a guitar. That would take a lot of faith. I mean, God, I would be asking for 4 signs before I go throwing
Oh
money
yeah.
down on somebody to buy them a guitar they don't even play. I mean, who does that? And so he was obedient. He was from New Jersey. Oh, I should
There
tell
you
him this
go.
part. Yeah. Um, but that's not you, that's your friend.
No, that's okay.
So
We're
yeah,
we're all
yeah.
family here.
Yeah, so New Jersey people are good people. Yeah, and so he bought me this guitar, and within 3 weeks, I wrote the song "Daddy." And again, that's not my best song, but what that song is about lyrically is, Dad, I have experienced this Jesus thing, and He is real. And my dad was an alcoholic. I love my dad, and in no way am I shaming him. We have been totally restored, and
Oh, that's
I love
great.
him with all my heart. I totally forgive him. I have nothing but love. And I check on him weekly. I visit him, and I honor him. The Bible doesn't say honor your parents if they are good parents, if they were there for you at this time or that time. It just says honor your mother and father, and it will go well with you. And I just believe the Bible. Thank God I wasn't educated out of believing the Bible. And so I did get my GED, and then I went and got an associate's in arts degree as well. But so God spoke to this man. I want you to buy me a guitar, and I wrote the song "Daddy," and the song is about, if you could just somehow experience this Jesus that I've experienced, you could be set free. You don't have to be addicted to crystal meth. You don't have to be an alcoholic. You don't have to be in this relationship with this woman that you don't even like. You can experience true life. And that's that's the lyrics of the song. And that song came to me 3 weeks after God had provided me an instrument. And the whole thing, there was nothing tweaked about it or changed. Now it was years later before I recorded it. It was probably 5 years later before I recorded that song. But yeah, that that's how I came to play. And then the gentleman, after he saw me do that with the guitar, bought me a keyboard. So then I learned to play piano, and that's how I wrote the song "You Alone." I was invited to speak at and minister worship at a church, and at this point, I was probably 24, and before, I was very elementary with my skills on the piano at this point, though I practiced a lot. I committed myself to practicing both instruments a couple hours a day. I would, especially the guitar, I'd play till my fingers bled. The woman who took me in told me, she's like, you need to stop, you're bleeding. Um, and so I would eventually stop. But whenever I would minister, and still to this day, if I minister at a church, I like to get there before anyone's there. And so I asked the pastor if I could have a key to get in early. And I just went to their keyboard and asked if they could just have the sound man turn it on. And I just began to worship the Lord. And I like to sing my prayers to God sometimes. And so I was singing You Alone. And the words that you hear in You Alone was the prayer of my heart that night. Very simplistic in the words. You alone are worthy, you alone are righteous, you alone are holy, and I give you every part of me. Lord, I give you all my praise, I give you all my heart. I mean, just very simplistic, but in the words. But that's how You Alone came to be, which somehow now God has kind of blown some breath on, and it's got some received some traction. And I don't know why or how, and but it is. And yeah, so that's where that song came. It was the easiest song that I ever recorded. And so after this, now I'm into music, and I eventually bought. I spent 2 year. Again, I wasn't educated. I never made it past the seventh grade. I went and got my GED, and then after I got that, I went and got an associate's degree at the local community college. But I was so uneducated, I couldn't. I would try to read the history books, like, what does this word mean? A What is Babylon? And so I mean, I would carry a dictionary with me, and I would sit in the library from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. Doing my assignments. But I would have to look up the words and what they meant. They didn't have Chat GPT then, or they had encyclopedias and dictionaries, and and I worked very hard and I graduated with honors. But it was a result of very hard work. And while I'm telling you that, it has totally slipped my mind. Hopefully, you can
No,
bring me back on course here.
what it is, Danny, is, and one of the things we are so excited about with CCM Discovery is the stories.
Yeah,
And from where you were lost, abused, scared, and and in your particular experience, God didn't just blossom you. He said, "I'm here when you're ready for me."
yeah,
And
yeah,
he took you, and he held you in his hands, and he just waited. And
yes,
he knew you'd get there. He knew
yeah,
you had to grow and you had to experience things.
right,
And but the thing that I'm hanging on to for you is that some part of you knew that's what you needed to do.
yeah.
And you
I knew
also
I had
had
to.
all these other
Yeah,
things you had to do, but you hung on to it. And God
yeah,
trusted you, and you
yeah,
trusted God.
yeah,
And that's a huge that's the part of the story that's hanging on to me,
yeah,
is that God met you where you were. He knew
yeah.
what you still had to do,
Right.
but but he had you in the palm of his hand.
Yeah, and I'll emphasize this if any new believers are watching this or will watch this at some point. Um, Everything isn't instantaneous, you know.
Hmm.
And again, I had a drug addiction when I got saved. I had an alcohol addiction as well. And the drug addiction, immediately God broke. But the alcohol addiction was a wrestling match. And I wanted free. But I was so addicted to drinking vodka 6, 7 days a week. I mean, that I would be determined that morning, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. But then I would just have to do it. And I mean, your body literally just, if you
It
don't
needs it.
understand
It
it, it's
needs it.
hard to
Yeah.
explain. Yeah. And but I couldn't live that way. I mean, I saw my dad, I did, and what that done in his life, and I knew that wasn't what God was calling me to, for sure. Why would God had let me experience him as he did, unless what this woman said to me was true, that he would use me as a spark to ignite something in people's spirits. I knew that was my calling. Um, Whether through music or speaking, um and he has done that through the years. I mean, the word came to pass. But it was a fight with alcoholism for about 2 years, and I would make it. Eventually, I got to where I could make it a week without drinking, and I was proud of myself. That was like an accomplishment for me. And then
Yeah.
3 weeks, wow! And then I would just get hammered, and then 6 weeks, then 2 months. Now I'm getting maybe 6 months. And the very last, this was when it went along for about a 2 year period from the time I was 18 till I was 20. But it didn't matter to me if it was Saturday night. I was determined that I would not skip church. I would go to the altar and repent. I mean, it wasn't in the contemporary churches. It's not as cool as, to go up to the front and get on your knees and pray at the altar as it may be, at the Baptist churches at the end of the service when the pastor gives an altar call. I was going up. I've never had really struggled with a fear of man, so I've never really cared about what people think about me, and that's really a blessing. I care more about what God thinks about me than what people think about me. Um, and so, yeah, during worship on Saturday night when I would drink, I was going to the altar during worship and repenting, and I made that covenant to myself that it doesn't matter. I'm going to force myself up. If I have a hangover, it does not matter. I'm going to get right with God again. And so this struggle went on for about 2 years, with each time me gaining more time in between the times that I would fall to alcoholism. The very last time, and here's another funny story, but embarrassing to me. Um, I was with a friend and we were, let me get a sip of water before I tell this one.
That's all right. We're good. As long as we know it's water, Danny.
Yeah, yeah, not alcohol. um, so that's good. The very last time that I got drunk, I was riding with a friend, and and again I had that same nature of fighting would come up in me, and just all the sins of the past, the sins of the fathers, you know. Um, we were riding, we got into arguing. I don't even, who even knows what we were arguing about? Just something ridiculous, I'm sure. And I was like, well, you know, and me and him both, we both kind of grew up the same way. We're like, well, let's pull over then, we'll settle it. And it just so happened this wasn't intentional at all, but we pulled over, and there's a lot more of these type of stores now, but they were very seldom um, back then. And we pulled over into a porn store parking lot to fight. And so we are out in front of this porn store yelling and like, well, come on with it then, you know, doing all the talk. And all of a sudden the guys who work at the porn shop come out and say, what are you doing? I said, what are you doing? You're the pervert working in here. And you know, I'm just, you know, talking trash to everybody. And eventually we left, and we may got in a little scuffle, I don't know, but it wasn't much, and we left, and um, then went to some bar, and that was a few blocks over, and then they kicked us out of the bar, and I started cussing everybody. So like all the men were like the bouncers, and everybody was like forming this wall to force us out of the bar because I wasn't wanting to leave. Hey, I'm a Christian going to church on Sunday mornings, telling everybody I know about Jesus, telling my family, and you know, it's so the shame that you know Satan would put on me when I would fall to that alcoholism, you know, the next day and remember what I had participated in and done. It was horrible. And so we go to the bar next door and they kick us out. And I'm thinking, well, they're not going to get the best of us. And so we get a knife and we literally flatten every tire in the parking lot to where I don't know, at 2 a.m. when that bar closed, they were not happy people, as I'm sure, because everyone in the parking lot had no vehicle to leave on, because all four of their tires were flat. I mean, my friend just ran around, you know, nailing them. And so this is Saturday night, so I have to go to church Sunday morning because I have made a covenant with God, and I do, and I have such a hangover, and I I'm thinking, okay, who saw me and my friend out acting like idiots in front of this porn shop that was drunk? Because this was a main road, um, and I wasn't out in the country, the rural areas. I was more in a larger city in the southeast and in North Carolina, and Western North Carolina. And beyond that, I knew a few of the people knew me at the bar, and I think they knew I did. They couldn't prove it, so I didn't get arrested or anything. But I knew what I had done, and I just felt so much shame, thinking, "Gosh, who saw me in front of that porn store after I've been?" Because regardless, I guess perhaps I have a type A personality, and I was really bold about my faith and really talked about Jesus a lot, and so just the thought of someone that I talked to or ministered to having seen me in front of a porn shop, probably thinking I was in there, or something like that, was just so humiliating. So went to the altar that Sunday morning, just like I would, and prayed, and then after that, my mom had left my stepdad after he shot at me. That's that stepdad. So he was out of the picture. And so my mom and I are good. We are totally restored, good. I've forgiven, she's forgiven. Everything is great and wonderful. I hold no bitterness, anger, resentment, shoulda, woulda, coulda, it's your fault type of attitude toward anyone in my family, my parents, no one. Um, my choices, once God began dealing with me, were between me and the Lord, and I thank God that He showed me the grace where I could have been just like my father. I could have been like my grandfather if it wasn't for God reaching into my heart, reaching into that room when I was 13 years old. I would be the same way, So I have no stone to throw. I just have an empathy to show, really, to be honest with you, and um my dad has MS now, and I have empathy for him, and I and it could have been me. It's just solely God's grace. I don't know why he chose to show me a different way, but he did. So I went to church after that episode with a friend at the PORN shop and prayed. Left church that Sunday morning. And then I went to my mom's and no one was there. And I don't know, do you remember those pictures of Jesus that people used to put on the wall and to be like Jesus just looking off into space, kind of had the mullet, with the background? You know
Right.
what I'm talking about? Those
Oh
pictures?
yeah,
And
definitely.
there was one of those like on the wall. And I remember just looking at that picture, just thinking, how were you perfect? I've tried and tried. And I cannot succeed. I don't know what to do. I don't know how I'm ever gonna move forward with the call that you've placed on my life, and I haven't yet started playing, music yet. So, um, 'cause that was 21 before I got the guitar, I was 20 at this point, and, I said, "God, Jesus, I need you," and all of a sudden, I had just an epiphany or a revelation, people use different words, of the greatness of God and how perfect and beautiful Jesus is, and sinless and spotless and truly the sacrificial lamb, and and the power that he walked in to totally deny himself, though tempted, right, in every way as man. And as I just sat there, I wasn't in a church service worshiping, but I was in my spirit worshiping Jesus as I looked at this picture of Jesus staring off into space. It wasn't that picture I was worshiping, or something. But it was giving me a point of
Yeah.
reference to
Yeah, it
put
spoke to you.
Christ in my mind. Yeah. And from that moment on, God took the desire away. And I never had another struggle, never got the drunk thing was over. And, but it took 2 years, and it wasn't from AA meetings, it wasn't from trying, though those things, God may use that in some people's lives, and people should pursue whatever means possible to get free of any type of bondage. But for me, that was my story of freedom from alcoholism, and it was failure after failure until I looked at the picture of Jesus staring off into space, and it gave me the point of reference to just admire him, and he's just so far beyond us and our capacity to understand how great he is. And so, yeah, and I was set for in his presence again, filled the room, and I was set free. And so then I no longer had to fight alcoholism. I no longer had to carry that shame anymore.
Danny, I this has been such an amazing conversation, and there is so much more that I want to touch base with you on, and
Yeah,
I hope you're open to coming back another time,
absolutely.
because we've just scratched the surface. The stories you're telling, and like I said, it's the stories that that make this show. It has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with God and how He's working in our lives.
Yeah.
And I want to touch base with you again, and I want to dig
Yeah.
deeper into your walk. Um, and we're definitely gonna go out on your amazing song "You Alone," and it's I kind of feel guilty for doing this, but we we always want to touch on my oldest son Tyler is a legitimate hero. He's a fireman. He's
Yeah.
changing people's lives every day, and my youngest son Matthew is profoundly autistic,
Mm.
and I have learned so much through him.
Yeah.
And for some reason, 9 seconds means something to him. And we always
Mm.
like to wrap up our show, and
Yeah.
I bringing it back to this, I feel almost selfish doing this, but it's just kind of holds the show together. We have Matthew's 9-ish seconds of wisdom, and you've
Yeah.
the stories you've told us are amazing. But if you could just drop like 9-ish seconds of wisdom on on what you say, because you are gonna be back, because your stories are amazing, and we have so much more to touch base on.
So you
But if you
want
could just
9 seconds of wisdom?
nine well, I
Oh
said
goodness.
9-ish,
Oh,
9-ish seconds of wisdom.
okay.
If you were in charge of the world for 9-ish seconds, what would you say to make a difference?
Well, as a young Christian, I asked someone I admired that um, what's the one piece of advice you would give someone who just wants to be all out, sold out for Jesus? And she said, just lay it down, just give him wholeheartedly yourself, and don't look back. And what you aren't able to do in the strength of your flesh, you know, God will do. He'll take care of the rest. What's the old Keith Green song? Just keep doing your best, pray that it's blessed, and he'll take care of the rest.
Oh, the
So
fact that you
that
brought
would,
Keith Green into this just
yeah,
makes my heart sing. You know?
that would be my wisdom. Do your best, pray that it's blessed, and what you can't do, Jesus will take care of the rest, and just be persistent. If God's spoken something to you, don't let go of it. A true word of the Lord will come to pass. It doesn't return void.
Danny, thank you so much. And I truly hope you will come back and talk to us some more.
Absolutely.
And we're gonna roll out here on You Alone. And Danny, I
Okay.
have to truly thank you. This has been an amazing time, and
Wonderful.
you have been a true gift to us. And
Well, I hope I haven't
chatting
embarrassed
with
you with
Steph.
some
Oh,
of the
by no
things
means.
I've
Oh,
thrown.
man, there's no
Yeah, I
embarrassing
tend just to talk
in
real,
Christ.
Yeah,
No, it's real,
yeah,
and the
real
fact
talk.
that we had the opportunity to talk to Stephanie ahead of time. You guys, you both are a true blessing, and I can't thank you
Thank
enough.
you.
This has
Yeah.
been a great show, and I thank you so much for that.
Yes, and thank you for reaching out to me, and good luck with your book that you're writing.
Oh, thank you, and
The confusion, yeah,
no,
of
we're gonna
legal,
have it,
yeah.
and when it happens, it'll get out there. But
Yeah,
we're gonna go out here on this amazing song, "You Alone." Thank you
thank
so
you.
much, Danny.
Thank you, Roger. Bless you.
You too.
Lord, I give you all of my praise. And Lord, I give you all of my praise. And Lord, I give you all of my praise. You're worth it. And Lord, I give you all of my praise. Lord, I give you all of my praise. And Lord, I give you all of my praise, for you're worth it. Give you every part of me, for you're worth it. And Lord, I give you all of my heart. Lord, I give you all of my heart. Lord, I give you all of my heart, for you're worth it. Oh, and I give you every part of me. You alone, Lord, you are